Categorizing device types by desktop, mobile, and tablet is so iPhone 1. At least it's not de rigueur in 2001. It's oversimplified, bordering on senseless, and likely breaks your performance analysis. We are talking about performance, so we want trenchant and meaningful monitoring for the modern web. That includes screen dimensions, device pixel ratios, and an abundance of breakpoints. However, keeping it simple yet significant is not easy. Using his own time-tested site as the ultimate playground, Tim will discuss the different approaches on applying RUM monitoring and what he's calling responsive RUM. Enjoy.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Tim. I'm based in Belgium, so it's already later in the evening. My kids are screaming in the back because they don't want to go to sleep, but I hope everything is fine. So this talk, 15 minutes, is all about responsive RUM. During my day job at Akamai as a performance architect, or when my wife falls asleep in front of the television and I pick my laptop and start working on the largest scale modeling website in the world, I often use RUM. And I love RUM. Why? Because I really see the performance as my end users look at the website. Now, although I love RUM, my love is not endless. And the main reason my love for RUM is not endless is because it's not responsive. What? 2021, and I make a claim that RUM is not responsive? Let me show you why. The closest you get to responsiveness in RUM, and all the RUM tools I use, I'm talking about the free tools, I'm looking at the open source tools, I'm looking at commercial tools, they all have this very simple desktop, tablet, mobile classification. And the benefit of this simplicity is that it's simple. And this worked very well 10 years ago when devices looked like this. In 2021, where a large phone can be bigger than a tablet, or a large tablet can actually be bigger than a small desktop. Or if you're looking at my screen, which I just bought during the pandemic, it more looks like this, where you have multiple screens next to each other. So what I want to say is, in a responsive world, which we are today in 2021, we need responsive RUM. And what is responsive RUM? So I will now share 4 things you can add on top of your existing RUM solution, doesn't matter which one it is, to make your RUM data more meaningful, because the simplicity of mobile, desktop, and tablet otherwise can lead to the wrong conclusions, either on the good side or either on the bad side. So the first thing is mobile, desktop, tablet. Does that take into account screen quality? No. Should we? Yes. In 2011, 10 years ago, a pixel was a pixel. Today, with Retina screens, that's the Retina screen of my MacBook, 2x. You have certain devices with 3x or even more. You ship different images. What does it mean? Very quickly, here you see a thumbnail. That's one of the 12 million images I have on my website. So Henry, it's not just a small blog. I have many pages, many visitors. So this is an image. Now, as many of your websites, I serve high resolution images based on the device. So instead of sending 160 pixels to the 2x version, I ship an image of 320 pixels, which is double the size width, double the size height, so 4 times more pixels. Now, why does it matter from a performance perspective? One thumbnail, 6 kilobytes. When it's small, the 2x version is 22 kilobytes. Who cares, right? Now, if you, for example, have a search result or related articles with 50 thumbnails, 50 times 6 kilobytes, 300, 50 times 22, more than 1 megabyte. Does that matter from a performance perspective? Potentially, yes. Can you see that in the mobile, desktop, tablet classification? No. So the good thing is you can capture this with window.device pixel ratio. That is, if you type that in your console, you will actually see the device pixel ratio of your current screen. So what did I do? I create a data layer variable on my pages. I read that info, and I send it to my RUM tools, Google Analytics in this case, and Ample's RUM. So that's what you then get. 1x, 2x, 3x, but also stranger values like 2.625, which is a very popular Samsung phone, 1.75, and plenty others. If we just zoom in, for example, on mobile, you see two things. One, these very strange values. There's so many different variations. And here, what don't you see? Do you spot it? 1x, not even visible. So today on the web, all the phones, or at least on my website, I have an international audience, but 1x mobile does not even exist or is like barely there. Now, this is great. This gave me a lot of insights. Now, from a performance analysis perspective, there is one big problem with this approach. There are just too many different values. If I change the resolution of my screen, it gets 1.825. If I change the other, so there are just too many values to make it meaningful. Now, there is a simple trick which I want to share, and that is add all these different variations into different buckets. Why? On my website, the maximum DPR I have is 2x. What does it mean? If there is a screen with 3x or 4x or 2.75 whatever, I always ship the same version. I ship the 2x version. Everything which is 1.1, 1.2, 1. And a bit, I always ship the 1x version. So basically, I don't look at all these different device pixel ratios. Yes, I need to know they're there, but from a website perspective, I only have 3 versions. And so this was before, this is after. So I see my website not as mobile desktop. I see my website as, hey, what is the performance of my 1x version? What is the performance of my 2x version? What is the performance of my 1.5x version? Before I had a 3x version, and based on the data I saw and based on the huge amount of data I shipped to 3x devices, I was able to say, stop that. The quality gains are just not good enough. So that's one thing. Let's go, I'll skip that. Second step, screen dimensions. Oh, Tim, mobile, desktop, tablet. One very easy solution would be to just look at the exact screen dimensions. Oops, sorry. What you're seeing here is this is coming from Google Analytics, and then I use Google Data Studio to create this graph. And here you see plenty of different variations, plenty of different screens, and others. That's this big chunk, 25% almost, is even more different variations. So the same problem here, if you're looking at the exact device dimensions, big problem, way too many variables, way too many data fields to actually get meaningful data. Other problem is if you have that huge screen and you have like, oh, what happens when you resize windows or when you have 2 windows next to each other? Then the physical width does not matter. Another problem is on my website, I allow people to enforce the desktop version, like when they're on their tablets, which is like something in between. Some of my users prefer the mobile version. Some of my users prefer the desktop version, so they can switch. Now that means that I ship a different version of the website. So the pure classification does not work. So again, here, similar solution as before. This is my website. I have many of these pages. But conceptually, this is on a very large screen. What do you see? A lot of white space here, a lot of white space there. And I call this design, not the desktop version, I call this the 720 pixels because that's the width of the main area and large sidebar. Now, what happens if I look at the website, which is on a screen, which is a little bit smaller? It's still the same version. I still ship the same data from a performance perspective, I still send the same things. On a slightly smaller screen, still, yes, different screen, but I ship the same version. Still ship the same version. It's only at a certain breakpoint that I'm in the 720 pixels small. That's the label I gave to it. That's basically the same with a small sidebar, different banners, and some slighter little different things. All these steps together, the next big thing would be 720 pixels no. That's what I would expect to see on a tablet. And then when you make it smaller, 540 pixels, the images start getting smaller as well. And then 360 pixels is, sorry, it should actually be 360 pixel no. That's the smaller one. So how do I do that? I look at the document body scroll width, and based on the width of the screen, I push all these hundreds or the 1,000 different variants into smaller buckets. So everything above 1080 pixels is basically the 720 large version of my website. How does that look? Again, here you see like 5 very simple things, big buckets. This is the version of the websites I serve. And a lot of big images, a lot of images, smaller images, that's all that matters. If you then zoom in on mobile, what did you see here? Most mobile users have the 360 pixels version as expected, but still more than 5% actually consume the non-mobile version. Why does this matter? Many of us look at the 95th percentile, but if you're looking at the 95th percentile with this data, you're likely not looking at the 360 pixel. Like, why is it so slow on the 95th percentile? That's because these users are looking at the desktop version on their mobile, and you're shipping the desktop images instead of the mobile images. So that's one thing. This is then how that looks in my RUM tool. So I can, for example, look at what is the largest contentful paint by version. I can look at, for example, the amount of bytes I ship per different version. So that's one thing. That's 2. And these are, like, I would say, the must-dos. There are 2 additional optional ones. One is data saver. What do I do when the browser, when the end user says, please, please, please save data? I ship a smaller version of my website. For example, I don't use the full 2x, 3x variant. I use the lower quality 1x version, and I provide a link. I have here icons. I didn't use font awesome in this case. I just switched to regular text. Other things is I use less advertising, and I do plenty of other different things, less related articles. Now, from a performance perspective, this is a completely different website. If I don't have this additional dimension, I would just look at the 720 pixels and you would have like completely different variations. I want to be able to zoom in. What is the performance of my data saver version? What is the performance of my non-data saver version? So that allows me to do that. Very simple. And then the last thing is ad blockers. I run a lot of ads on my website. But if you see strange things from a performance perspective, it's likely due to ad blockers. So I'm okay that my end users use ad blockers. It's their right. You can't do anything about it. But I do detect if they have ad blockers. And if they have an ad blocker, I again create an additional dimension, send it to RUM. And that allows me to look at the performance of my website when ad blockers are enabled versus ad blockers are not enabled. And then you see typical things like, oh, largest contentful paint is faster when the ad blocker is enabled. That's good. But what does it allow me to do? Suppose at a certain point in time, I switch from Google AdSense to my own first party for performance. At that point in time, when you make that change, which views do you impact? You actually only impact the non-ad blocker things. So in those cases, I want to be able to zoom in on only the traffic which I actually impact, because otherwise these 195,000 beacons would just be noise where I just don't add any impact. And I would say, oh, I made a change and it's not visible. Or I made a change and it's less big than I expected. Of course, there is, what is that? Let's say 25, 30% roughly, which has this. So that allows me to zoom in. Another thing is when I was tuning for Core Web Vitals, like Barry talked before, I fixed my CLS was 0. But still my RUM showed a lot of CLS. And I was like, wow, is that possible? I browsed to the URLs. There is no possibility for CLS. What did I find out? Oh, I looked at this dimension, and I saw that all the CLS came from the ad blockers, which when the paint already happened, because my paint is very fast, at that point in time, the ad blocker removed the placeholder for my ad, and everything shifted up. Then based on that, I was able to find a fix. And now I have also, when ad blockers are enabled, I have less CLS, which is a good thing. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Responsive RUM in 2021. If you're just looking at device, mobile, desktop, tablet, yes, it's a simple classification, but in my view, it's too simple. If you really want to get a lot out of your RUM, you need to add up to 4 additional dimensions. One is the image quality. Remember DPR, 1x, 2x, 3x. The different design breakpoints, the key different designs where you ship different data, and then taking into account data saver and ad blocker. That is basically the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's still some time for questions. Otherwise, if not, then I can also answer the questions in the chat while we go for the next speaker. Over to you, Henry.